So let's all just close our eyes and take a deep breath, move into our center. Loving God, may we behold and protect your sacred creation and not prey on it. Please teach us to discover the worth of each thing, each person, and be filled with awe. May we recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature. As we live gratefully, may we encourage one another as we work for climate justice. And finally, from Dr. Seuss in the Lorax, unless we care a whole awful lot, nothing much will change. It will not, it will not.
So thanks everyone for coming. We are very blessed today. We're having four speakers who are going to talk a little bit about climate advocacy. And I'll introduce each one of them as they come up. And I'm going to ask Jonathan. It's Jonathan Laycock-Neasley, I think, if I had that right, Jonathan.
Yeah, Laycock-Neasley.
Nicely, sorry. I knew I'd mess it up somehow.
I like to say I went from one unpronounceable last name to two.
Yeah. Ours is mine has been unpronounceable from the beginning. Sorry. So Jonathan is the director of faithful advocacy at the Interfaith Power and Light in DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. And Jonathan is going to do a little bit of an overview about environmental advocacy, and then talk a little bit about what's going on in Virginia and DC. I'm going to ask Bob Simon to talk, and then Jody, and then finally Karen Unthank and Jeff Barber. So Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, John. Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation today. It's great to see you all. John told me a little bit about your group, the work you've been doing, and that you're ready to move into advocacy, which is...
You're frozen.
Yeah, we lost his picture there.
It is... Are
You're
you
back.
all hearing me all right?
Yeah, we lost you for a minute, but you're back now.
Okay. Let me know how it goes. We just moved into a new place and the Wi-Fi is still getting sorted out. I'll keep pushing. So as the faith community, we speak with a moral voice on climate issues. There are plenty of folks who can tell legislators about the economic impacts of a certain proposal, but we can speak about what we see to be right. We can be speaking with a prophetic voice for justice. We can be drawing from the prophetic Christian tradition, and nowhere is that.
Jonathan, we're losing you again. Since you don't have if you're not having a presentation, do you just want to turn your video off and we'll see if that
As was
helps?
said, shoot, still having problems.
Yeah, why don't you turn your video off and we'll just listen, if that's okay, because sometimes that
Yep.
helps. Okay, thanks.
All right, yep. So we can be a prophetic voice for justice. And finally, as was said in the opening prayer, we can talk about the interconnected nature of creation in our communities. We can be sharing with legislators that when we care for creation, we are essentially caring for our neighbors. The two can't be separated. I
lost him again. Does anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, we can't hear him.
It might be better if he just calls in on the 301 number.
Jonathan, maybe, can you hear us? Can you call in on the number? Maybe that would work better.
Sure. Let me switch to my phone.
Thank you.
Do you want to go ahead and have the next person speak, John?
Yeah. Bob, would you talk a little bit about what you're doing? And I think it's with the Maryland Catholic Catholic Conference. I'm sorry.
Sure. So it would probably been better for me to come after Jody and Jonathan, because I think they're going to give the bigger picture of the interfaith perspective on advocacy, particularly in Maryland. But I can talk a little bit about what we're doing to try to amplify the strong interfaith voices in favor of climate protection and environmental justice as Catholics, and what we can do and what we are trying to do to mobilize sort of the institutional structures of the Catholic Church to also be part of that larger interfaith effort to protect and care for creation. Everyone on this call knows that we've had in our church for decades, going back to Pope John Paul II, some fairly strong statements about how this is an integral part of our faith. Obviously, that has been sort of accelerated and intensified under Pope Francis. One of the mechanisms that the official Catholic Church has to interface with legislators in Maryland is through something called the Maryland Catholic Conference, which is an official organ of the church. It represents the bishops responsible for Maryland. So that would be the Archdiocese of Washington, the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and then for the Eastern Shore, the Bishop of Wilmington, Delaware. And so they have a small staff. They're located up in Baltimore. They also put together something called the Maryland Catholic Advocacy Network, which they mobilize to lobby for a variety of bills and issues before the state legislature in Maryland that are important to the Catholic Church, important both institutionally and important to sort of the tenets of our faith. So this year, the Maryland Catholic Conference, is strongly pushing 3 bills. None of them have anything to do with the environment. One deals with family leave, which is fine. One deals with perinatal hospice, which is great. And one deals with, not surprisingly, Catholic school funding in Maryland. But for the last couple of years, we had been, as Catholics in Maryland, as lay Catholics in Maryland, we had been sort of pushing them to have more of an incisive presence on environmental legislation, because that's important to, another important dimension of our faith as well. And we've had kind of a mixed set of results with them. They did take a position in favor 2 years ago of something called the Maryland Clean Energy Jobs Act, and they sort of swung the Catholic bishops sort of officially as part of the coalition to enact that bill, and that was kind of a very helpful step. Last year was kind of a strange year in the legislature. They didn't really have much to, we were pushing them to have something to say about a number of these bills, but the legislature sort of, kind of went into suspended animation over COVID and never really kind of came back from it. So this year, we're pushing them once again to take a look at about a dozen pair of bills. And can I share my screen, John? Can you?
Yeah, Ashley? Yeah, Ashley.
Oh, Ashley, whoever.
That's right. Yeah, sure.
Yes, if you could just enable me to share screen, I'll show you one picture. While she's doing that, just
okay.
Right. Let me find the right screen. Should be that one. There we are. Okay, so this is a set of 11 bill pairs that Maryland Catholics for Our Common Home. Now, this is a sort of informal group of lay Catholics from the Archdiocese of Washington and the Archdiocese of Baltimore. We have organized Catholic participation in lobby nights in past years, and sort of have at the same time, combine them with a little teach-in for participants where we sort of emphasize the connection between Catholic social teaching and care for the environment. So this year, this is what we have gone to the Maryland Catholic Conference with, and indicate our bills that we think that they should explicitly support, and we have them in kind of two categories. So 1 through 5 are our top priorities. And they include bills like the Climate Solutions Now Act, transit bills, other bills that relate very clearly to protecting the environment. And then we have, there are probably 100 bills pending in the legislature that deal with the environment. And our official position as Maryland Catholics Our Common Home is we're in favor of all of them. But in terms of bills that we think will have the most impact and where there really is a clear nexus to Catholic social teaching, for care, hearing both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. These are the bills that we think are most consequential, for which there are very strong interfaith and even broader coalitions. And I'm sure Jody and Jonathan will mention them all, so I don't want to sort of take their thunder. We think that they're all very important, that they all have important dimensions of not only caring for the environment, but also addressing environmental injustice, environmental racism, and other equity issues. Transit safety and investment, for example, the public transportation really is a crucial modality for working class people to get to work. And to the extent that, we don't have, a functioning public transportation system in Maryland, particularly in the Baltimore area, that is really a justice issue because it really makes it difficult for people to get to work. Obviously, if the transit fleet's not well maintained, it's a great source of transportation pollution. Again, that pollution mostly affects already overburdened communities. And so from a variety of perspectives, bills like that are really important to have front and center for people. So our strategy this year, because it's difficult to organize a lobby night and have people come to Annapolis to lobby in the current moment, our strategy this year is first and foremost to put a lot of effort into persuading the Maryland Catholic Conference to adopt these bills as bills that they support. If you look in the 6th position, there are 3 bills to clean up the state renewable portfolio standard. They've already testified in favor of 2 of those 3 bills, but they really haven't taken a position on these other bills, and we very much want them to. So that is sort of our first priority this year. And then the second thing that we're going to be working on is, again, trying to find ways to plug in people into existing advocacy efforts by environmental groups, by interfaith groups, so that we're sort of joining forces with other people who are also pointed at these same sorts of bills. So that's kind of my brief thumbnail sketch, and I think hopefully we can turn it back over to Jonathan and Jody. They can talk a little bit more about the bills, and I'm happy to chime in if someone's got a specific question about one or the other of them. If you're on this call and you happen to live in the state of Maryland, my request to you is, and you're interested in being part of the effort to lobby for these things, you'll hear about lots of opportunities from Jonathan and Jody. Again, we're trying to be additive to what other groups are already bringing to the table here. But if you would like to sort of stay in contact with our specific activities in favor of these bills, just give your email information to John Heisel, and John will get it to me, and I'll be happy to circle around back to you. Hopefully, if you live in Maryland and you live in an interesting district where we have where there's a state legislator who's kind of on the fence for some of these things, obviously, they're always very responsive to people who are from their district. But again, I don't want to sort of, I think Jonathan and Jody have more to say on that. So at this point, I think I'll sort of turn it back over to them.
Thank you, Bob. That's terrific. Jonathan, can you pick up from where you left off?
Yes, sure. You will hear me all right now?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Yeah, so I'll just move to talking about our advocacy work in Virginia. In Virginia, we have several great partners in this work. We work with the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, which was originally just Fairfax County based. They now also work in Arlington as well as Prince William County. And then we also work with our sister organization, Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, based in Richmond. And we collaborate closely in mobilizing Northern Virginia folks with the work that they do in Richmond. So I don't think it's news to anyone that there have been a lot of changes in Virginia politics in the last 2 years. Democrats are in control in both legislative chambers for the first time in several decades. And one of the many effects that that has had is that Northern Virginia legislators are newly empowered. The Speaker of the House is from Northern Virginia, the Leader of the Senate is from Northern Virginia, and the leaders of the committees that consider environmental legislation are also from Northern Virginia. So in the House, it's Delegate Ken Plum in Fairfax County. He's the chair of the House committee that considers environmental legislation. And in the Senate, it's Senator Chap Peterson in Fairfax City. So I say that, you know, certainly if one of those two is specifically your legislator, you have a great opportunity. But just generally, for folks who are in Northern Virginia, your legislators and by extension, you have an outsized voice in determining Virginia's policies right now. In working with our partners, one of our top priorities over the last 2 years has been environmental justice legislation, addressing, you know, that disparate impact I was talking about, that Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities far too often are bearing the burden of an unfair share of the pollution that we all cause. And you know, one of the stories that I'll just quickly mention to highlight this, you may have heard about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, the ACP, which was supposed to stretch through much of the eastern US. And Buckingham, Virginia, which is a majority Black community in the southwestern part of the state, was scheduled to have a compressor station for that pipeline, which is where the gas is recompressed and sent on its way. And compressor stations are the place where explosions are most likely to happen. It's a place where leaks are more likely. There are a lot of health concerns that go along with having a compressor station placed in your community. And so the community of Buckingham organized, they mobilized, especially through their faith communities. They engaged with legal services, and ultimately they were able to defeat that compressor station. And later the entire pipeline was recalled by Dominion. So in some ways, it's an amazing success story that the community was able to do this work. But in other ways, it was a huge draw on time and resources and energy in fighting a project that never should have been approved in the first place. So we worked with our partners last year in passing the Virginia Environmental Justice Act, which made environmental justice the official policy of the state of Virginia and directed all state agencies to consider environmental justice in their rulemaking. And this year, we and our partners are back with new legislation to give agencies the tools to make those changes. So these new bills would direct the agencies on how they should be working together to achieve environmental justice, as well as ways for communities to give input and stop harmful projects like that compressor station before they even start. So both of these bills, they have kind of long technical names. They're amendments to this legislation that was passed last year. And these amendments have passed through the General Assembly and just need the governor's signature. Governor Northam has generally been quite supportive of this work. And so today I'm just asking Virginia folks if you could write a message to the governor, thanking him for his support of this work and asking that he quickly sign these two bills into law. And I'll drop a link with some sample language and the official government form where you can send that message in the chat. I'll also quickly mention our DC work here. And so in DC, we're going to be doing a lot of work in the coming year, educating both our neighbors and our council members about the dangers and climate damage caused by methane gas, what's often called natural gas. I'm guessing many of you, like me, have heard that methane gas is kind of the clean fossil fuel, that it is the bridge to a clean energy future. And that was, generally accepted by the environmental community even a decade ago. But we've learned a lot of new information in the last few years about methane, about the damage caused by fracking, certainly, which is the main way methane is extracted in the US, and about the damage caused to the climate when methane leaks, which it does a lot. So, I would love to share more with you all about that work at a later date, but for now, I'll just tell you about how we are asking the district to stop subsidizing methane appliances with our clean energy dollars. We have a limited amount of clean energy funds in DC, and too much of it right now is being spent on fossil fuel appliances instead of actual clean energy. So right now we have a petition to the relevant DC agency asking that they be spending our clean energy dollars on clean energy, not fossil fuels. And with that, I think I'll pass it to Jody to talk about the work that's happening in Maryland.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's terrific. And when you circle back, I'm going to ask each one of you if in addition to the chat, if you could send me some information that I can share with everybody in the green team. And then I'll do that right after the call or maybe tomorrow morning so that we can do a lot of follow-up. And Ashley, maybe you and I can work on who lives in DC, who lives in Maryland, who lives in Virginia.
Yeah, I thought I just would make a summary doc that I can put out in the Tuesday e-letter about these different
That would be perfect.
efforts too.
Okay. Jody, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. This is great. And what a great turnout. And that was really fantastic, Bob and Jonathan. Just really energizing. What a different time we're in right now. Energized to really make some positive change rather than feeling like we have this yoke of a destructive administration hanging over our necks. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. Okay, great. So this was actually on Bob's list. This is the second bill that was on his list. I had to take off my bifocals and scooch in real close to see Bob's list, but this is the Maryland Transportation Safety and Investment Act, or TSIA. You might see that acronym. So this is legislature moving through the Maryland State House. And Bob gave a really great brief overview about the intersectionality of this bill with not only clean air, but environmental justice. So what this bill is proposing is to address a $2 billion shortfall in the Maryland transportation budget. Apparently, the Federal Transportation Authority reports that our buses and trains are the worst in the United States in terms of reliability among similarly sized cities. So, and where does that manifest itself most? Where is our MTA most active? It's in Baltimore. So this is really kind of a manifestation of historical racism that has occurred in regards to the discrimination against communities of color, largely around Baltimore. The budget shortfall stems just from years and years of disinvestment. But when you stop and think about it, the Baltimore region actually supplies nearly 50% of Maryland's GDP. So what is frustrating right now is that the bill's recommending a 6-year plan to address that shortfall. And there are some state senators, and I'll talk about that in a moment, who they are, that are saying, let's just do this for the first 3 years and pause there. And that's really kind of a slap in the face, because Maryland has voted to indefinitely support increases for WMATA year after year after year, which supports affluent workers going in and out of DC. So it really just, it exposes, I think, what Baltimoreans who are working to, rely on public transportation to get their kids to school, or pick them up, I should say, I guess, after school or after daycare, get to their jobs, get to healthcare, get to a vaccine. I mean, just imagine what the complications are and the barriers for upward mobility when a public transportation system is failing us. I think the other thing that I want to mention here too, well, let me just back up for a second. So the shortfall, the proposal is $123 million, and that is what is estimated is needed to just maintain the fleet in a state of good repair and reliability. So it's really a bare minimum investment to ensure that communities that rely on public transportation can function, can perform at their jobs, can get healthcare. I think another thing that we are seeing in trends among young people, Jonathan's probably the youngest one on this call, he may be able to vouch for this. There is a trend in terms of them not actually pursuing driver's licenses or purchasing their own cars. This is a phenomenon that is appearing all over the country. And so when we think about this, is at its first blush, obviously an environmental justice issue and a racism issue, it is also an issue we need to be thinking about in terms of the next generation and what they are basically putting their foot down and saying, we're not going to be party to this, decimation of the environment, really kind of driving some new attitudes there. So what can you do? I mentioned they need 29 votes to pass this bill in the Senate. They are at 25. There are 4 senators that are holding out. One's in Prince George's County, Senator Joanne Benson. And I will definitely PDF these slides and share them with you, John. But one is in Southern Maryland, Senator Arthur Ellis. And 2 are in Montgomery County, Senators Susan Lee and Ben Kramer.
Oh, wow.
Which is really irritating to me, and such a stark, I think, attitude about this is a Baltimore problem, this isn't my problem. And I just think that gets at the crux of the immorality of what's happening with this bill. So a couple things to do. I mean, I just thought of this and it's not on the list. Certainly a letter from a congregation, if, that is a big lift to have a stance placed on congregational letterhead, but I think it does make a huge difference. Something like that it could be emailed in to the senators, to the Senate President Ferguson, who actually is from District 46 in Baltimore. Something like that on congregational letterhead would be really powerful. Certainly spread the word to others that that might be in these districts. Some simpler things that you can do as an individual. You certainly can call. Maybe right now, John, I don't know if you can put something in the chat box for me. It's hard for me to do chat while screen sharing. I think I sent you some links.
You did, and I will try. Which one do you want?
Okay, well, I'll also send it to Ashley. The one that has, how do you find the senator contact information?
Senator contact information, yes. Hold on for 1 second.
If you can stick that in there, and that would work for all bills, even the ones that Bob was mentioning. This is a link. You could go in there and get the emails and phone numbers for all senators in the State House for Maryland. Calls are worth like 20 times more powerful than an email. Don't be afraid to call. You're not going to actually talk to your senator. You'll talk to their staffer. They have to be nice to you, so don't be intimidated. But yeah, call these senators if they're representing you. You certainly have a right to call the Senate President as well. not that you don't have a right to call other senators, but they are going to ask you, where do you live? And if you don't live in their district, they're not going to necessarily record your position. But you can call the Senate President, Ferguson. Also, John, if you don't mind, I don't know if anybody tweets, but I did collect the Twitter handles for those 4 senators, and we'll stick those in the chat box, and I'll email those to Ashley. That's another way. We had an op-ed come out on an online distribution called Maryland Matters. 2 Presbyterian pastors from Baltimore, one from the city, one from the county. And I worked together to write an op-ed, and it really gets at what I'm talking about. I think there's some great talking points in there. So if John wants to share that link, I'll also share it with Ashley. I'm making you work hard, John, I know.
Well, it's not hard. It's just that I don't know how to do it.
It's okay. Well, I will get it all to you both, and you can circulate
Yeah,
it.
I know how to do it, so you can send it to me.
Okay. So yeah, so that op-ed is really powerful, and I think, you know, if you do tweet, you can share that on Twitter and tag those senators and say, this, you know, speaks to me. You should be listening to this, etc. We have also, I'll share I think what I mean by IPC News is we've posted that there, and it gives you some talking points to use. I want to just say too about our action alerts. I mean, it kind of segues from this story about these 2 pastors. We had put out a plea to everybody that's on our action alerts. There's about 800 or 900 people that have signed up for additional emails from us every 2 weeks during legislative session. And you can sign up for that too, but we had put out a call, and these pastors responded and said, we had several respond and said, we'd be happy to pen, you know, if you pen it, we'd be happy to put our name to that. And so that's a great way to just hear very real-time needs that are happening. I mean, things move so fast in the legislature that if you're part of these action alert systems, you know, maybe there's an opportunity or something you can do really quickly that would make a difference. So I will share the link for where you can sign up for that. I just want to say one thing. It was really interesting. These 2 Presbyterian pastors, I said, okay, wait, here's 2. They're Presbyterian. One's from the city, one's from the county. I wonder if they'd like to co-author this. Well, it turned out they knew each other. They had actually worked together in Philadelphia, and they had some really interesting stories about how the transportation system in Philly was very good and became kind of an opportunity for them to minister to people in the community. And, you know, they were always on the buses and stuff with their flock. So it's a really great article, and I'll make sure you guys have it. But I think I'm going to stop there, and I may have already taken up too much time.
Oh, no, thank you very, very much. Karen and Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Montgomery County for those of us who live in Montgomery County, and then when you're finished, maybe we can go back again. I mean, from my perspective, this is perfect. I mean, it really gives us some very concrete ways to get involved. And then, you know, actually, we have this social justice newsletter. It goes out to a lot of people. If we can get folks involved in some simple stuff where they can write letters. Ashley, you and I have to talk to the pastor about penning a letter from the church.
Yeah, I think you should follow up with Chris at the PPC.
Yeah. Anyway, Karen and Jeff, please.
Can we share the screen because we have some slides?
Sure.
So, can you see this?
Not yet.
No. Do we share screen? We say share screen here. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Move this thing down. And where are we? How do I get this thing working? Slideshow. Move this down here. Okay, so we're here in Silver Spring, Maryland, and we have a small nonprofit organization, Integrated Strategies Forum. which back in the early 90s was involved more locally, like with regional community indicators project. And then we got more involved internationally with the UN and the Commission on Sustainable Development and UNEP and some others, which we won't talk about. And nationally with the Citizens Network, right? Focusing a lot of the sustainability issues. So anyway, we aren't going to talk about any of that. We're going to talk about when we realized that we really needed to be more involved locally in our own communities. And so we'll tell a little bit of story about how we move forward on that. Let me get this thing down here. So we're in Montgomery County. There's it's the largest county in Maryland. It has 1 million residents, 370,000 households, spread over 500 square miles, and we have some of the most diverse cities in the country. Now, we were all just focusing on climate change. We were very excited, all of us, about how the governments finally were getting together in Paris, like back in 2016, to focus and make commitments on climate change. Our own county executive, Ike Leggett, was also there in this group, committing our county to those aims. Then this guy came into the picture, pulling the US out, and that was kind of pretty depressing for most of us. Yet a lot of us were still committed, in the various counties and cities, including Montgomery County, emphasized our commitments to continue with those agreements and those actions. A lot of them have been part of this campaign around that we are still in, of different mayors, counties, and different groups around the country. And in this particular area, these are some of the, I get this thing down here, can't get rid of it. These are some of the different cities and counties in this area that also were part of this whole initiative. I'm not going to go into the state stuff, but in 2018, a lot of people focused on what the county was going to do on climate, and there was this climate mobilization work group that came up with a number of different recommendations, and you can access that. It also has a lot of resources connecting to things, and most of those groups in that we are still in met in San Francisco for this Global Climate Action Summit, talking about what was going on around the country, in contrast to the US, the federal government's position on this, to what we were doing locally. And we weren't going to San Francisco. We thought, I don't know if you can see that. We, trying to get this thing out of the way here. We got together with One Montgomery Green and Poolsville Green and our council person, Tom Hucker, to do an affiliate event that would address some of the same topic areas as what was going on in San Francisco, but what was going on here in Montgomery County. So we invited a lot of the groups who are in the county working on climate change to meet. And that was this event, Montgomery County Confronts Climate Change. And these are a selection of some of the groups that participated in this. We had broke out into the different topic areas and with other suggestions. And that was back in August, and in September, we gave a presentation to the county council on this with some of the things that we came up with. I'll get back to a little bit of that later, but in terms of our own lobbying efforts of the county council, aside from that kind of work, we've been working with McFax, the Montgomery County Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions, which has put a lot of focus on local advocacy work in terms of getting the people who are part of this group to identify who's your district representative, and to get get us together to focus on talking to them and addressing these different issues. One of the issues that we were doing recently had to do with the county's adoption of the revised International Green Construction Code, and focusing on some other additional measures on net zero energy. And this thing is in the way. I don't know how to get rid of this thing here. Can you see this? This thing is blocking it. Really irritating. So, and we met with our district representatives, Tom Hucker in District 18, and we met with him, and we've been having conversations to address this, and this is moving forward. And it's just one of the many different kinds of issues and actions to take. A lot of those all come together in this effort to put together an overall climate action plan for the county, of which there's been all the kinds of discussions and work groups coming up with about 900 recommendations for action, for different kinds of actions to deal in these different areas. And you can access that. That's the plan is apparently going to be finalized this spring. And with the idea that the goal that by 2035 we have this net zero reduction goal. We have some of the groups that participated in that event in the affiliate event, are there in the report which you can access, and these are links to some of those different groups to get involved with. And also for people who kind of new and want to get involved in different things, there's of course all kinds of groups here with calendars and letting you know what's going on. And basically our recommendations in terms of what to do with that question, that's what we're thinking about, is like 4 things basically, which is first, get to know your local representative, get to know what your municipality is doing, and connect with local groups that are doing things. And finally, this is a movement. This is a global movement on climate change, and we all need to connect and support each other. So
Thank you.
that's it.
That's fabulous. So anybody has any questions or comments to any one of our 4 speakers, please speak up right now.
What's that? What?
I had a question for Bob Simon about this Maryland Catholic Conference. I know you were saying, so is there not an opportunity for us for members of we're part of the ADW, for parishioners to say that we want these bills to be part of their effort? Or do you have to be a Maryland resident?
So the Maryland Catholic Conference, the people that the staff work for, it's the Archbishop and the auxiliaries in Baltimore, but it's Cardinal Gregory and his auxiliaries here in DC, in the Archdiocese of Washington. And so certainly there's I think that there's certainly scope, and particularly if you're in Holy Trinity, you can sort of say, look, we've got parishioners in Maryland, people who are our parishioners, come from Maryland. And so, that's certainly, I think there's certainly an opportunity and a rationale for you to sort of weigh in. If that's something you're interested in, communicating to their state, you can send a communication to their staff up at their Baltimore office saying that you sort of, you're in support of the conference, taking sort of a more incisive approach to some of these more consequential environmental bills. No harm in that. You know, and to the extent that your pastor is interactive with any of the bishops in our archdiocese, to the extent that he's willing to sort of pass that message along too, that this is important, that'd be a great idea as well.
Bob, just to follow up a little bit, so I know one of the bishops in DC, Bishop Dorsonville. I can write to him, and you're going to send us, so I know specifically what bill. If you send me that chart, maybe I
Sure.
can ask him to weigh in. He would be weighing in with the Maryland bishops, but maybe that'll help a little bit.
Sure.
One idea kind of feeds on the other. And I think you make a good point, Ashley, if we could pull up a letter going to the Maryland bishops and saying, listen, 1/3 or whatever number of 10,000 people belong to Trinity who live in Maryland, and we're behind this or something like that. That would be very concrete that I think we could do and pull off. Any other questions or any thoughts? Judith, I'm sorry. Yes, Judith.
That's okay. I'm in Northern Virginia, and I know the Maryland, the Virginia legislature just finished their budget late last night. And so this special session is over. And so they're not going back into session again until, I'm not sure when the next legislative session is, but, because they only meet for 5, 6, 8 weeks a year. Is the best resource to get connected through Interfaith Power and Light? Jonathan, you're the only one that actually talked about Virginia. And there's nothing much to do. I mean, Governor Northam is in favor of the 2 bills that you talked about. And so the likelihood is he'll probably sign them. That shouldn't be a problem. So what should people in Northern Virginia be doing, even though we go to church in DC?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. So, I mean, as you probably know, this is an election year in Virginia.
Yes.
And so this is a great time to be connecting with your elected officials, with folks who are running for office, especially governor, and sharing that you are, the term we've been using is a faith climate justice voter. So, that could also be something to think about organizing with your green team. There are many, nonprofit house of worship friendly ways to engage with elections, share resources with folks who are running, and share that you are people who care about good environmental legislation. So I'll drop the virtual clipboard into the chat here if you want to sign up and get updates as we're doing that work.
Good, thank you.
And Jonathan, if you could send whatever ways that you think people can link in relatively easily, either in Virginia or DC, and maybe put me and Ashley and a bunch of other people on your regular communications, so that we can pick them up and then sign on when action is needed. In addition,
that would be great.
In addition to being much more involved at the local level.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of people at Holy Trinity live in Virginia.
Yes.
Because it's not a place that you want to go to church.
We represent Holy Trinity for McFax, for Montgomery County. We say exactly that. There's a significant number of people from Holy Trinity that live in Montgomery County.
Yes, exactly. Say the same thing. And Jody, you're going to send information also to me so that we can hook up on your action. So other questions, other thoughts?
I have one question, a thought. I think it's a couple of years ago when we met with Interface Power and Light. We were given these little things to put on our light switches. And since we're working with, the Green Team's working with Holy Trinity School, is there any possibility that you still have these, or where could we get a hold of them? And I think it would be a good reminder for especially our students to turn off the lights.
Yeah, that would be great. We Haven't been making as many since we haven't been in the office in a year. But I am guessing we could get them together for you. Let me put my email in the chat, and you can send me more details about how many you could use and where to send them.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
If you don't get it, Mary, I'll send it to you. Other thoughts? Amanda, I'm thinking that this can be helpful in your work with advocating with and for WIN. I mean, advocacy is, they're just kind of standard techniques that advocates use. These happen to be advocates around climate. And WIN actually does some work around advocacy around climate as well, I think in Ward 7 and 8. So that's a good connection, I think. Benjamin, do you have anything to say? You're a world-class advocate. I haven't heard a thing from you.
Well, after listening to the presentations, I really don't have much to add. I think the plans that have been laid out as to how to influence the various legislators to get those bills passed are spot on. I think they're terrific.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Jody.
And thank you,
Thank you.
Jeff and Karen.
Thank you for having us.
And any other thoughts? Well, thank you all very, very much. I think we want to end the same way we started, with our friend Dr. Seuss. Unless we care a whole awful lot, nothing much will change. It will not. It will not. Thank you.